Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of The Gavel, featuring attorney Ana Toledo. Ms. Toledo is the senior attorney and general counsel to Targeted Justice. She has a background in constitutional and environmental law and is an experienced litigator, including 2 cases at the U.S. Supreme Court. And here's Ms. Toledo.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. We have plenty of news to share with you, of legal news to share with you that are very important for our community. So before starting that, I'm going to do a little prayer, which is this week we continue to receive reports of a lot of targeted individuals that have been atrociously attacked. And our prayers go to them. And what we can say is just please stay strong, because we are fighting every day to shut down this heinous program. I know the pain is real. And for me, it's unconscionable that the Secretary of Defense has not pulled the plug on this atrocious program yet. But we have to pray that he sees the light and that he does. So I'm just going to read one of my favorite passages that I also have in my email, and it is that no weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and the righteousness is from me, says the Lord. Amen. So if there is an interruption of this transmission, please come back, because I have a backup. I anticipated that, yes, amen. So, I anticipate that some of the content that I am going to provide to you today will not be very welcome by those that perpetrate the harm on us. So if in some way it gets disconnected, please come back. So there are great news. Last week was a great week for the unveiling, for the exposing of this horrible program. For those of you that have not been up to date with what's been going on, first of all, the DOJ did a filing on the lawsuit that I had talked to you about last week, how there's a class action of 6,000 FBI special agents that are trying to have their identities hidden from the public because they participated actively, either a little bit or a lot, participated in the J6 persecutions. And I say persecutions because we all know that there were praying grandmothers there, and a lot of people that did not commit any crimes, and yet they were found guilty and they were sentenced to prison terms. So the Department of Justice filing, which was last Wednesday, basically said they reiterated the lack of standing of the agents to use the Privacy Act to demand that their identities not be revealed. They don't have an expectation of privacy. A public employee, by definition, doesn't have an expectation of privacy. So, and also the motion by the plaintiffs mischaracterized the statements that were delivered by attorney Ed Martin, and the record is there. So it's just a matter of the court seeing exactly who's telling the truth. So I anticipate and I hope that the government prevails in that, because what they seek is for the cover-up of people that engaged in malfeasance. And I'm not saying all of them did, but as it has been reported in the news, some of these people, many of whom worked at the terrorist screening center that is now called the Threat Screening Center, well, those people were making fun of these defendants and relishing on the harm they were perpetrating on them. That is not appropriate conduct for any law enforcement official. And that is what has been transpired in the discovery in some of these cases that was produced, maybe accidentally, maybe by a good Samaritan. In some of these cases, the evidence is there. So let's see. I'll keep you posted on what happens to that case about keeping those people private. Now, the good news for our community is that the truth is dripping out. It's dripping out little by little. As you may recall, last week, Senator Rand Paul came out publicly saying that he is supervising DHS and he was talking about the quiet skies, how Tulsi Gabbard had been inappropriately placed on it. And also he mentioned us. He mentioned average Americans that for exerting their freedom of speech were illegally placed on this lists. So the news this week became better. And that's why I say drip, drip, because I think that the strategy is to little by little bring out the information, because it's going to be such a shocker at the end of the day that they need to drip the information. So light is shining upon the darkness, one ray at a time. A month ago, Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, declassified a 15-page document where, and I'm going to write about it in my media because it is heinous, where it joined the domestic violent extremist terminology adopted under the Biden administration. And I don't even know how they got to the connection of mental illness and involved HHS in it. And this is really a really important document, because we need to inquire with HHS what was its role in collaborating with the illegal classification of average Americans as domestic extremists. And most importantly, if there were any directives to these psychiatrists that are putting people in mental hospitals left and right without their due process of law. They are depriving them of freedom without so much as taking them before a judge, or without having a defender to advocate for their freedom and stating they're not crazy. They are either victims of torture or victims of organized stalking. So this week we had the great unveiling of some documents on May 23rd. Tulsi was, and I'm not going to play it here because I don't want to get a strike for playing unauthorized content. But Tulsi came out, she gave to 2 journalists declassified documents, and she came out revealing documents that show that the Biden administration rolled out the program to millions of average Americans. So when Alex Jones last week said millions of people have been placed on the list, I was a little skeptical about it. But now, after reviewing the documents, even though we don't have the data, the documents that proves how many people were, I'm sure it was in the millions because of the contents of these documents that were revealed. So the Biden's FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and National Counterterrorism Center co-authored a December 2021 memo, intelligence product titled Domestic Violent Extremists and Foreign Analogs Might React Violently to the COVID-19 Mitigation Mandates. This was all geared at silencing anybody that had a narrative different to what the government had. And you have to see that lurking in the background is Big Pharma that didn't want people talking about or against the jab. So that's how I, from my perspective, as a person who was originally targeted by Big Pharma, you can see that there's a common thread here. So Tulsi appeared on Fox News, and stated the following: the strategic implementation of the Biden administration designation of potential violent domestic extremists, and excuse my accent, it really talks about people who may likely turn out to be domestic violent extremists, or who may likely turn to violence because of these quote unquote ideologies that they hold. And there is a consistent thread through here that these ideologies that they are designating as turning into potential violent activity happen to be those of people who were using their First Amendment rights to oppose certain policies of the Biden administration, such as vaccine mandates, mask mandates, parents that were worried children would be forcibly vaccinated without their consent or knowledge, and people that opposed the border policy. All of these people were deemed domestic violent extremists. Documents issued in December of 2021 and gave a speech, an ominous speech in 2022, warned American people that the MAGA Republicans pose a direct threat to the fabric of our republic. That is half of the voters in this nation. And social media, she continued saying, social media companies undermined American First Amendment rights. Well, we all know that because we know that many of your accounts have been canceled, have been taken over, and we also know about the Twitter files. We know now that there were 80 FBI agents assigned to Twitter under Jack Dorsey to control the content, monitor and control and censor the content of people that, like you and me, we weren't influencers, we didn't have huge accounts, but they had to control the narrative. So that is what, as we know, there's an executive order by President Trump signed on January 20th, the day he came into power, saying that that collusion between government and social media companies to censor speech is prohibited. So when you look at all of this together, it all makes sense now that the orchestrating, not just of speech suppression, but also of categorizing people as domestic violent extremists. The thing is that we have been saying for a long time that the unacknowledged special access program was going to be rolled out to the entire population because they wanted control of the population. And we were called conspiracy theories. Guess what? Now, another conspiracy theory that comes true. Now, there are millions of Americans that were put on this list. We don't know how many yet, but I think this is part of the drip that is going to be shown. Let me show you these numbers here, because many people had arguments with me saying, no, it's in the millions. And I say, yeah, maybe that was true, but I have to talk with facts. And this table that you see here are the numbers that were produced during the El Haiti versus Cable litigation. I obtained them through the Court of Appeals appendix. And if you can see from here, this was only until 2017. After 2017, it totally went on steroids. But at that time, it said it had the list of the total nominations, which were almost 4 million. Then the total ads, these ads were to handling codes 1 and 2, which is what constitutes the watch list, which is only 0.28% of the terrorist screening database. Then there were the rejections, and then there was a list of all these numbers that they weren't rejected, they weren't added, and that is a list that as of 2017, we had 2.5 million people on handling codes 3 and 4, which constitute 97% of the list. As you know, 75% of the people on handling codes are on handling code 4. So those are the people whose targeting is so slight that they don't realize. They think it's bad luck. They don't realize they're targeted. So now let me show you the documents that were produced to Mr. Schellenberger and Miss Catherine Herridge. Okay. Miss Herridge, Catherine Herridge, who has, she needs to connect the dots now. And if you are digital warriors out there, if you can reach out to her, because she has been reporting on Havana syndrome. And even though she doesn't seem to pay attention to the civilian victims, and that is what Dr. Lambert has been constantly, pummeling, just listen to me, interview me, Well, Miss Harrich was one of the people. Michael Schellenberger and her were two of the journalists that were giving these documents. And what happens is that she needs to connect the dots that these people that are classified as domestic violent extremists are subtly attacked with electromagnetic weapons and eventually can develop Havana syndrome, because we know that it's pulsed energy that causes Havana syndrome to the brain. So I hope pretty soon she connects the dots, but let's see if our digital warriors out there can help her connect these dots in terms of what the meaning of these documents. You have here the first document here. It says National Counterterrorism Center, DHS, and FBI assess that some domestic violent extremists and their foreign analogs will threaten or mobilize violence in opposition to new or expanding COVID-19 related mandates. And so they went on with their narrative. You can find these documents in both in the Twitter of both Ms. Hebrich and Mr. Schellenberger. She reported that FBI, Homeland Security, and National Counterterrorism Center co-authored these December 13, 2021 documents. The report cites criticism of mandates as prominent narratives related to violent extremism. These are just people that are fighting for their lives, people that didn't want to get injected with a substance that they didn't know whether it was safe for them or not. And fighting for your life and protecting the integrity of your body. I don't know how they translated it to being this prominent narratives related to violent extremism. But here we have it. These disclosures came out after Senator Rand Paul had dropped the information that he was going to be looking into the improper listing of average Americans in he thinks it's just as quiet skies. Maybe he knows the whole truth by now, but we need to red pill him on this. So I think that it is they are doing it to drip the information so it's not a shocker. Now, for us, this is great news, because what we have been saying all along has now gone mainstream. The millions of people that refuse to get injected and that oppose these mandates and that oppose the mask and all of it, now they realize, well, maybe I was classified as a domestic terrorist. And even though they are not stopped when traveling, they realize that there's something really wrong with the entire Stasi government. So for us, this is great because it removes the stigma that we have been for so long ignored, in terms of saying there are two secret categories of the terrorist screening database that are reserved for people that do not represent a threat to national security and are not screened as such when traveling. This is testimony under penalty of perjury by former Terrorist Screening Center Deputy Director Timothy Crow. You need to memorize this like a mantra because you need to educate people about it. So, yeah, now we believe that there are millions of people. And so I have to apologize to those people, even though I don't have the facts in my hand as I have that table I showed to you. There has to be millions of people on this list, and the information is dripping out. And it's just awesome news for you, for me, for the community, because it corroborates what we have been saying all along. So our plight has gone mainstream. It's not just 300,000 Americans. It's millions of Americans and many more in Europe and around the world. That's why we need the digital warriors to keep up the verbal, your posting, your activism through the posting. I know that some of you have been atrociously attacked for being really good at being digital warriors. And I commend you for your bravery, and I hope that you don't back down, because that is what the criminals are counting on, that you'll back off because they will increase your torture. But that is why they are so scared of you. They are so scared of you because you are very good with the power of your keyboard. So having said that, we have to go. I want to remind you all, for those of you that have not sent your letter to Mr. Patel demanding removal from the TSDB, the moment is now. We need to establish a paper trail. Remember, Mr. Michael Seidel, who the Gateway Pundit deemed the face of FBI corruption, is no longer the chief of the FOIA office at the FBI. That is great news for us, because when you write your new FOIA or Privacy Act request, it should not be denied. We cannot confirm or deny because there is a letter that you sent to the FBI demanding your removal from the illegal categories of the TSDB. And why do I call them illegal? Because this is a refresher. I know most of you know this, but for those of you that don't, Homeland Security Presidential Directive 6 that gave way to the terrorist screening database only allowed for the inclusion of identities of people that meet the reasonable suspicion terrorist criteria. Timothy Grow admitted handling codes 3 and 4 are reserved for people that do not meet the minimum. It's not even probable cause, which is the standard for somebody to file an accusation against you. No, he said they don't even meet the minimum reasonable suspicion criteria. That's all of you there. And these new millions of people that were placed on the terror screening database are probably in these two handling codes as well. So please send your letter via priority mail, track it, get confirmation that it was sent, because many people are coming out of the woodwork. Today we had wonderful Sarah Westall. She's in Targeted Justice Advisory Board, and she wrote her Substack demanding to be removed from the TSDB. Let's make this a national movement. Let's demand that Mr. Patel stop the illegal practices that he inherited. So once you get your confirmation, send it to tjustice2@proton.me with a screenshot of your delivery confirmation. Now, the time, probably Mr. Seidel left behind some of his minions, but I think I have reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Patel is implementing appropriate directives within the terrorist, within the FOIA office at the FBI to comply with the FOIA statute and answer FOIA requests as they should. I'm not going to share with you the information why I think that, but I have reasonable grounds to believe that. Okay. I wrote Darren. Yeah, I did publish. I did publish my tracking was delivered of my letter. So please, everybody, send your letter and let's make things happen. Things don't just happen by themselves. Let's force things to happen. We need 1,000 letters over there. So there's another great news. There's another great news for our community, which is that 14% of the civilian workforce at the Space Force has been laid off. There's Mr. General Saltzman, who, as many of you know, is the general that directs the Guardians at the Space Force to fire electromagnetic weapons at civilians in the United States and outside of it. So efforts to shrink the size of the civilian workforce across the federal government and within the Pentagon are having disproportionate effects on the Space Force, according to the service top general. Chief of Operations General Charles Saltzman told lawmakers Tuesday that the Space Force, the United States military's smallest service, has lost almost 14% of its civilian workforce in recent months, due largely to early retirement and resignation incentives implemented by the Trump administrations. Who knows? Maybe President Trump, like I said, this is drip, drip. Many things are happening in different places to silently shut down the illegal program that is being run from this operation. The Space Force, established in 2019 during President Donald Trump's first term in office, that's actually a misnomer. It's just that it was renamed the Space Force because it already existed there. Has approximately 14,000 members, about which 4,000 are civilians. And then Saltzman went before the Senate to testify the following. We understand the desire to reduce the civilian workforce, Saltzman said, during a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing. It's just having a little bit of an outsized impact on the Space Force. Well, aren't we happy? We're so happy about that. Speaking in March at the annual Air Force Association conference, Lieutenant General Philip Garand called the reduction orders incredibly challenging for his team at Space Systems Command. Well, if they weren't targeting civilians, they probably have a lot of more time left to do what they have to do. Garand said, there is a lot of concern as a command and as a commander. We're going to focus on how we can continue to deliver the mission with the human resources that we have. So I have to ask each of you that live within the jurisdiction of the senators that I'm going to read to you to go to their Senate webpage and ask for a video conference with them. And in your video conference, you're going to ask them for a meeting and that you can have some people to provide information about the Space Force operations. If you can coordinate the meeting with us, we'll certainly be more than glad to talk to the Senate Armed Services Committee. And these are the people: Mississippi, Roger Wicker; Nebraska, Jill, I need your writing to Deb Fisher. I'm gonna tell you in a little while the questions you can ask in your in the comment section, asking for a video conference. Mike Rounds, South Dakota. TI's over there in South Dakota. Let's write to. I need you to write to Mike Rounds. Johnny Ernst in Iowa. Chris, I hope you're listening. We need you to write to her. Dan Sullivan, Alaska. Kevin Kramer, North Dakota. Rick Scott in Florida. Tommy Tuberville, Alabama. Mark Wayne Mulling in Oklahoma. You go to their website, their Senate website, and you in the meetings request, you ask for a video conference, and you can write something along these lines. I saw that you were interrogating General Saltzman from the Space Force, and I would suggest you call him again and ask him the following questions. Why do the Guardians fire electromagnetic weapons at GPS coordinates within the United States? Why ask them to bring their log files for the weapons discharge for the past 10 years? And then ask, Which of these weapons have been fired within GPS coordinates within the United States? You can ask them also, are the Guardians operating weapons of mass destruction in violation of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty? I'm sure these senators didn't ask this. Please grant me a video conference so that I can attend with the experts at Targeted Justice that will gladly give you the receipts on this. So I'm counting on those TIs from Alabama, Oklahoma, Alaska, North Dakota, Florida, Iowa, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Mississippi to write to your senators in the Armed Services Committee. Let's get things going. And why do we need to get things going? Because we already opened the tab. Targeted Action 2025 is happening in DC in September 5 to 8, 2025. There is a tab under Activism in Targeted Justice. And there is a registration form. Like last year, we're going to try to coordinate for people to share rides or share accommodations. And we also ask, and this is for your safety, that all of you going also fill out our membership application. We are reluctant to allow people that don't fill out the membership application to allow them to register. And the reason is this: we're going to be in DC, and we want to ensure the safety of every attendant. We don't want, plants in there. We want to, as much as practicable, to ensure everybody's safety. And it's going to be an action-packed weekend starting on Friday. We have registration Friday afternoon. And then we're going to have activities Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. We want, for those of you that write to your congressman, woman, or senator, to coordinate these meetings with us if you want us to be there. But we will give you the materials and we will prepare you to talk to them about what they want to hear right now, which most of them want to know. They want to get to the bottom of the Havana Syndrome mystery. They want to get to the bottom of who's doing it. And we all know it's not Russia and China. And we need to demand that civilians be included in the Havana Act of 2021. We can no longer be invisible to Congress and to the Senate. And this is the reason why we're doing in DC is because the moment is right. If it had been last year, we wouldn't have thought it would be safe to carry out this such important activity, but the moment is right. All of these truth drips that are coming out are pointing to one direction, and that is that we will see freedom in the coming months, freedom from this atrocious program. This is no time to back down. This is a time to be as active as possible, not just as a digital warrior, but also showing up in DC. And we're going to have banners, we're going to have flyer distribution, we're going to have rallies in front of important places. So we need, very important, we need leaders, group leaders that will make sure that everybody is following the rules and to follow a protocol for the safety of everybody. So our reps in Washington, yeah, that's a great question. The reason why we did not, TI Day is August 27th. So we were going to do, 29th. We were going to do it that day. But the Congress and Senate are going to be away for the entire month. So of August. And they come back on the 1st, which is Labor Day. So we said, okay, we will let them get up to date a little bit those 3 days and move it, because we don't want you to spend the money going there and not meeting with any of them. So that's why we moved it 1 week after TI Day, because yes, they are going to be there starting on the week of September 1st. That is why that is why we scheduled it not for a TI day. We're going to be live streaming. We need volunteers, those leaders that do the live streaming, because we're going to have various locations depending on the amount of people we're going to have, with the amount of banners that we're going to have made. Also, there is a registration fee. It's all in Targeted Action 2025 tab in our website. So please, we are going to be updating it as soon as we start having people registered and collaborating with us. Yes, I want to be a leader. Yes, I'm going to be there. Yes, I'm going to travel and I can bring at least 3 people from my state. Well, that is when we're going to be building up on what we're going to be doing. Just like in Targeted Action 2024, we won't necessarily put everything out there, and we will leave some of the information to provide it to you when you get there, because we don't want to alert the plants. Okay, so heaps of rain in ports. Yeah, rain or shine, we're going to go there. We're going to have the checklist of what to bring to be prepared. This is a very, if there has been an activity by Targeted Justice, I think this is the most important one, because we are very close to freedom, and we need to show the numbers. We need to show how many people have been victims of this atrocity for so long. And hopefully we can get people from that have not identified as targeted yet were added to the list to, not only sympathize, but also participate in demanding to being removed from this horrific and illegal list, because Congress has never enacted a statute making the terrorist screening database an act of Congress. And they are in violation. The Terrorist Screening Center and the watch listing people have been violating Homeland Security Presidential Directive 6 since 2003. It's time for Mr. Patel to stop the illegal actions by those in the FBI that obtained monetary gain by obliterating the lives of so many with a stroke of a pen. We're not going to stop fighting for all of you. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you next week, same time, at Wednesday at 3 Central Standard Time. I hope to receive a lot of your letters that you have sent. The letter to Mr. Patel demanding. This is not asking, this is demanding. You are not a domestic violent extremist to be in any kind of list. You're a law-abiding American that does not meet the reasonable suspicion criteria to be placed on that list, with the consequences that it has. So I don't have any questions here. Thank you, everybody. Let me see if I have any questions that I should look into. Yeah, the reps, I said they're going to be there. Yeah, and for those of you, it'll be, we're trying to, for those of you that live close to the DC area, try to go into the Senate and Congress buildings and let us know if your V2K works there, because we need feedback from other TIs to go into that, into those 6 buildings, and let us know if in fact their V2K is silenced there. And we have a theory about it. So yeah, Darren, God is good. God is watching over all of us, and if he wasn't, we wouldn't be here, because we have survived military grade weaponry and psychological operations and all sorts of sabotage. So yes, I hope to see you next week. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.